I'm sort of like going to talk about a few things that have been bothering me as I drive, because I have to get some work done today. I have a lot to do today, running around. My daughter is still going to physical therapy because of the incident at college last year where she was sprayed in the face with perfume in the bathroom and she became very ill, all of this nonsense. So she still has to go to vestibular therapy and try to gain all of her ability back. And it's still going on, and I'm very nervous about this, but more to the point, I want to bring up this whole thing with the discrimination of Russian Americans and what I've experienced. And I was born here. Okay, that's what makes this like really disgusting. I was born here. My father was an Army Air Corps pilot. He was in the Pacific under General Chenault or something like that. I've read his diary. Because I know he said he flew with General Chenault in one of his beautiful ships. He was so happy about flying in this beautiful ship. But he actually sacrificed his love of flying to set up whatever they did with the radar to get planes safely through the Himalayas and wherever they were, and stuff like that. And he would set up these control tents, whatever they did, in freaking snake pits, sometimes up to their necks in water, because there was a lot of typhoons over there, apparently. It was not a very pleasant place to be, And he did this, and he loved serving this country. And that's how I was raised. I was raised to love this country because this is a free country, and we need to support that. And I never questioned it. Never. He tried to teach me a lot of things, including Morse code, which I thought was a little bit over the top, but, there's many things he did, and I don't know. Yeah, it is. But, so what happened, at the air show in Pittsburgh is disgusting. Okay? Absolutely disgusting. Now, I hear all of these things on the news right now about how the lying about Russia and all that has caused President Trump all of these woes. And that is true. That is very true. And I have said this for years. No one has listened to me. But, what they have done has affected every single Russian American, anybody who has Russian family over there, and God forbid, heaven forbid, you have Russian family who works at the Kremlin. Then they're going to say that you're automatically involved in spying, even though you're not. It's bullshit. It truly, excuse my French, I know, but it's getting ridiculous. Uh-oh, who is this person? There's a man crossing over. Oh, this is the Rosary Man. Do the sign of the cross for him. Yes, I know. Saint Mary, pray for us. Saint Mary, pray for us. That's the man who does the rosary every day. I just did the sign of the cross for him. He walks this road and does the rosary every day. He's like a monk kind of guy, but he dresses in plain clothes. He's very much like I was. Don't you hurt him. You better drive slow. Anyways, I used to walk and do rosary before Biden became president, because now I'm just flustered. I can't even think my way through my day anymore. I'm so upset. But anyways, so let's talk about the air show, because this is ridiculous. You know, I grew up going to air shows. Now, I have to admit, when I was young, I was not too thrilled. You know, when I was a kid, it was fun. When I was a teenager, it was like, oh, come on. You know, but I went to every air show that has been at Pittsburgh. And this one air show, my son decided would be nice to bring me for Mother's Day. Because, you know, it was Mother's Day weekend. I think we went on Mother's Day, actually. And so he got Michael to drive us, and we all went over there. And it was very windy. And I unfortunately wore a skirt, which was a stupid idea. It was very uncomfortable because I couldn't really walk around freely while the wind is blowing, because the skirt kind of like poofs and stuff. But in any case, I wanted to go on the cargo plane and tour the cargo plane. That was my big thing that I wanted to do, because last time we were at the air show, Joseph and Catherine were children, young children, and I just couldn't bring them on there. It just wouldn't have been fair to other people. So I really wanted to see this cargo plane. I was so excited because I see them fly over our house all the time, and it was really something. So I'm in line, and this reservist, I guess he would be, I don't know, he's just, you know, normal guy, comes over. He says, ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to get out of line. We're not going to let anyone else on this plane. And I said, what are you talking about? And, you know, and I just looked at him like, what? There's like, it wasn't like the tour was about to end. It was very weird. Like, I have never had that happen to me. And I knew something was wrong, because there were these two high-ranking people walking around like there was some kind of issue. This was in May of 2017. So I said nothing to him, and I just stood there. I sort of, you know, the line is going, and I'm standing there, and I'm crying on the tarmac, and I'm like, this can't be. And other people are getting in line, and he's not doing anything about it. And I said, oh, no, you don't. I said, I walked right up to him, and I said to him, why did you take me out of line, and you're letting these people in line? And I told him point blank, my father was a World War II veteran, and I'm here for his memory. And I was crying. And he said, okay, go. Because he got upset too. And I said, thank you. You know, I was really mad. But it didn't occur to me until years later why they did that to me. And I have complained to the military. I've complained to the Air Force, you know, reserve unit directly. And no one has ever sent me an apology or anything. And I think they're disgusting. This is not supposed to be how they treat the children of veterans who went to war. I mean, we've already, like, you know what? When a person goes to war, okay, and I'm not talking, my father was not an officer, pardon me. He was just an enlisted man. They took him out of college. You know, I mean, granted, he was in the ROTC because, you know, his mother and father didn't want him going off to war, so they tried to put him under a sports scholarship with the help of another friend, and he hated playing football. He hated it. He wanted to be in the Army. That's all he did. So, you know, and that's what he loved. But this is something that he believed was important. And if he got taken out of school, so be it. Now, we're not going to get into the talk about his first wife, because his first wife kind of tricked him into marrying her, because from what my grandmother told my aunt, that the baby wasn't my father's, but she said it was my father's, and he married her. And that was a bad decision, because her behavior about having other men's children didn't stop there. You know, she was not a nice woman, but they ended up divorced, and he married my mother, and it was fine, but whatever. So when he was finished, he couldn't go back to school. You know, it didn't work that way. You know, so the sacrifices that enlisted people make, their families also make that sacrifice, because there's a lot that they give up that the regular civilian people take for granted. But with that being said, I sit here and I think about what happened that day, and it really bothers me, because I have no idea who would have done such a thing. And why were they following me? How did they know I was even going to be there? It's disturbing. It's extremely disturbing. And in light of what is going on with the family abroad, I find it to be a possible criminal matter. I mean, it's possible. They should not be in my business. Okay, this has nothing to do with the Vatican. This has nothing to do with the Orthodox Church. This is about evil people doing evil things. And I really don't know anyone who has been taken out of a line at an air show and told they can't tour the plane. In fact, I will tell you that there were a variety of races and ethnically diverse people touring that plane, and I was furious. I was absolutely furious. So, I didn't know, like I said at the time, who was responsible for that, but I couldn't go on the plane. And I paid for my ticket, and it was embarrassing. It was humiliating, and it was disturbing. But I'll tell you what, when I found out why, you know what? Then it was traumatizing. Because then you realize just how evil and how much abuse there is in this government. Now, I don't believe that the president at the time, Trump, would have done anything of this nature. I think this was all done on the sly. I really do believe this. I do not believe that people could get a warrant to do this to me, because there's no possible way, because I don't do anything wrong. You cannot get a warrant against a person that doesn't do anything wrong. And that is why I'm angry. Capiche? So, understand this. What these people did with this whole Russiagate thing affected regular people like myself. And, you know, it really didn't come to a head with this whole thing until 2020. And that's probably because people weren't buying the fact that trolls were interfering in the elections. So they had to come up with something else. So when Russia started to defend their boundaries, they start calling it an invasion, and then they start getting people riled up. And that's when people really started to feel the evil of the propaganda that's out there. And I can tell you that I am not going to stand with Ukraine as they were trying to make everybody do at that time when Biden first came in office. I'm not going to stand with a corrupt nation that has done what they have done. And you have got to be crazy. This is a free country where we have free thought. And if I disagree with our government supporting that corruption, I have a right to voice my opinion without retribution. And that is without being improperly and illegally labeled as an asset, a spy, an operative. This is nonsense. Because the reality is, it didn't just stop at that air show. It went further than that. And I will explain to you in just a minute, because I've reached my destination.